at one point been a loving, caring woman, Rose had become demeaning and abusive to the girls. Anne Marie further went on to state that while she herself was submissive to Rose's demands, her older sister Charmaine refused to have her spirit broken and would stand up to Rose, often stating that her mother would be coming to rescue her soon. Charmaine would also antagonize Rose by saying things such as, "My real mummy wouldn't yell and scream at us." One incident that has survived from this period is that one of Charmaine's friends, a young girl named Tracy, who lived in the upper flat of Midland Road, recalled that she went to the West's home at one point, only to find Charmaine naked and standing on a chair, with a gag in her mouth and her hands bound behind her back with a belt, as Rose stood alongside with a large wooden spoon in her hand. According to Tracy, Charmaine had been unconcerned, while Anne Marie stood in a doorway with a blank expression on her face. Now, on March 28th of 1971, Charmaine was admitted to the Gloucestershire Royal Hospital with puncture wounds to her left ankle, which Rose put off as being the result of a household accident. It doesn't appear that there was any investigation into this. Remember, this was a different time, and things like this were often ignored by the people working in the hospital. Now, on June 24th, 1971, Fred was set to be released from prison. And on the 15th of that month, it is known that Rose brought all three of the girls to visit Fred. However, somewhere between the 15th and the 24th, Charmaine West was murdered. Now, there's been some speculation as to when she actually died. Forensic pathologists have stated that she did die somewhere before Fred was released. Charmaine's friend Tracy's mother gave testimony at the trial that they had moved, and that at some point she had come back for her daughter to visit Charmaine, only for Rose to respond that the child had gone to live with her mother and a bloody good riddance. She is known to have told anybody who would ask about the child's whereabouts that Charmaine had gone to live with her mother, that Raina had come calling and taken the girl to live with her in Bristol, while also telling the staff at Charmaine's school that Raina had collected the child and taken her to London. Now, when Fred was released from prison, according to Anne West, he told the young girl that her mother had come and gotten her older sister, and when Anne asked why she had been left behind, Fred is reported to have said, "She wouldn't want you, love, you're the wrong color." During this entire period, Charmaine's body was stored in the coal cellar at Midland Road, and when Fred was released, he buried the girl's body close to the back door. As with the bodies that were eventually found at 25 Cromwell Street, when Raina's body was discovered, it was bisected at the hips, and there was also bones that were missing. Sometime in August of 1971, Raina West showed up in order to collect her children. This is noted as the last time Raina was seen alive. It's been said that Fred strangled her in the back of his car. When Raina's body was discovered, there was a short piece of metal tubing alongside her body, and it's speculated that she had been tied up and subjected to severe sexual torture at the hands of Fred and Rose. Her body was discovered near a cluster of trees known as the yew tree coppice at Letterbox Field, which is roughly 1 mile from Much Marcle. She had been dismembered and placed in plastic bags prior to being buried. On January 29th of 1972, Fred and Rose got married. On the application, Fred wrote that he was a bachelor. Something of interest to note here is that there were no friends or family present at the wedding, save for Fred's brother John, who acted as a witness and best man. Not long after this, Rose was pregnant with their second children, and they moved from Midland Road to 25 Cromwell Street. Fred eventually purchased the house, which they had rented from the Council of Gloucestershire, and he paid $7,000 for it. In order to accommodate this purchase, Fred converted the upper stories of the three-story home into what in Britain is called a bedsit, which is basically a boarding house, where you get a room and then you and everyone else who lives there share a bathroom and cooking facilities. Not long after they moved into the home, Rose gave birth to another girl. This child they named May June West. And quickly after this, Rose began working as a prostitute. One of the rooms in the upstairs of 25 Cromwell Street was turned into her own personal. They advertised the services that Rose offered in what's called a contact magazine, which is similar to a swingers magazine. She was encouraged by Fred to look for clients in Gloucestershire's West Indian community, and it's also known that she engaged in casual sex with both male and female lodgers inside the household and anybody that Fred happened to bring home with him. Rose is known to have told people that there was no man or woman alive who was able to sexually satisfy her. And it has been noted in a number of places that when she was engaged in sex with a woman, Rose became extremely brutal with her partners, oftentimes partially suffocating them or using dildos on them that began small before escalating to the point that the women were in tears and bleeding from both their vaginal and anal regions. Rose is known to have said to anyone who complained about the treatment that they received that they obviously weren't woman enough to take it. In addition to all this, Fred is known to have participated in 3 ways with his wife and these women. The Wests were known to enjoy particularly brutal bondage, and in fact, when the police raided their home with the search warrant, they found a number of devices that were used in this, as well as an extensive collection of videotapes depicting bestiality and child sexual abuse. Inside the family dynamic, Rose controlled their finances, spending much of her time in the area of the house that had become dubbed as Rose's room. And as stated at the beginning, Fred took a particular devious pleasure in watching his wife engage in sexual acts with strangers. He would videotape as well as watch the encounters through peepholes. Eventually, he installed a baby monitor in the room so that he could listen to what was going on anywhere in the house. He installed a private bar inside the room, as well as a light that would let anyone who came upon the door know that she was not to be disturbed. He also installed a separate doorbell and door into the house to facilitate her clients. The majority of the money that they earned through Rose's business was spent on home improvements. By 1977, Rose's father, Bill, had come back into the picture, and it seems he and Fred had some sort of begrudging respect for each other in that they opened a cafe which failed not long after its grand opening. But he also began partaking of Rose's prostitution services. and it's speculated that Bill Letts was the father of a number of Rose's other children, as by 1983 she had given birth to 8 total children, 3 of whom are known to be the children of Rose's clients. Fred seems to have accepted these children as his own, and if anyone ever brought up that the children did not look at him in any way, shape, or form, he would inform them that that was because his great-grandmother had been a black woman. Now, Fred and Rose attempted to portray themselves as doting parents. In fact, there's a number of videos online and various documentaries of them taking the entire family out for outings in parks and other areas where they would go hiking and looking at flowers. But obviously the reality at home was much different. When the children turned 7, they were each given a list of chores, and any failure to not follow through on these chores or to not do them to Rose's expectations would result in severe beatings. They were also not allowed to socialize outside of the house unless Fred and Rose were present. And their children have said that Rose was the disciplinarian of the household. Fred generally did not engage in the physical abuse. However, he was the major perpetrator of the sexual abuse that they would all receive. Over the course of one decade, 1972 to 1992, the West children ended up in the hospital at least 32 times with various injuries that were all explained as household accidents. One story told by Stephen West is that he was mopping the kitchen floor one day and Rose accidentally stepped into the bucket he had been using for water, and Rose hit him over the head, knocking him to the floor before she began to kick him in the chest, screaming at him that he had done it on purpose. Another incident involves Rose becoming enraged at Mae West and taking a knife to the child, lightly scouring her chest and ribcage area until it was covered in fine scratch marks. While the child screamed and begged for mercy, even Fred was not immune to his wife's violent outbursts. She attacked him on a number of occasions, which the most prevalent one that you can find online is her chasing him through the house in 1974 with a large butcher knife. Fred was able to barricade himself in a room, and Rose slammed the knife into the wall, her hands sliding down the handle and her fingers over the blade. She ended up having to get stitches, telling Fred, "Look what you done, fella. You've got to take me to the hospital now." Now, as stated at the beginning of the episode, there were going to be extremely graphic depictions of the abuse that the children suffered, specifically at the hands of Fred West, and while I've gone into some of it, we're going to delve into it a little bit deeper here. As the oldest surviving child is Anne Marie West, and she has claimed that her father began abusing her early on, and that Rose would begin partaking in this, often binding her to objects while encouraging Fred to rape her, which he often would do. She would also make the child do household chores while wearing various sexual devices and provocative outfits. This, again, in order to entice Fred to assault the child. At the age of 13, they began to prostitute Anne Marie, telling prospective clients that she was 16 years old, and Rose would remain present in the room while these rapes took place. One particular incident from this time involves Rose taking Anne Marie with her to a local bar where they had a few drinks, after which Fred collected them both. Once inside the car, Rose screamed at Anne Marie demanded a note if she thought that she was her friend, after which both Rose